we're going to be graphing linear equations using gradients. Now if you have a look, guys, I'm going to go straight into question 1. It says sketch the graph of y equals to x. Now remember when we're trying to find the x and y intercepts, we sub in x equals to 0 to find y, and we sub in y equals to 0 to find x. But if you have a look, guys, if I sub in x equals to 0, y will be 0. And when I sub in y equals to 0, x equals to 0. So basically the graph passes through 0, 0. That would be the intercept for both x and y. Now guys, you just have to kind of remember it this way. If there's no constant following the x, if there's no constant, that means the x and y intercept will automatically just become 0. Okay, so try to remember that. It passes through the origin. Now, we're going to look at gradient. What is the gradient of this line, guys? Y equals to x. This is y equals to 1x, isn't it? When y equals to 1x, the gradient is 1. The number in front of x, the coefficient of x is always the gradient, isn't it, when y is the subject. So, I'm going to say that the gradient, when we use m, is 1. And 1, we can say that 1 is same as 1 over 1, isn't it? Now, the reason why I split it into a fraction is because I want to make that rise over run. Remember how gradient is equal to rise over run? So, by making this into a fraction form, 1 over 1, I can say that the rise is 1 and the run is also 1. So now let's put that onto our graph. Let's start with the run. If run is 1, we run horizontally 1. And if rise is also 1, we go vertically 1, don't we? And it passes through this point and it goes up to that point. So it's kind of like, it gives us a steepness. So we draw a line that's passing through this point and also that point right there. That determines the steepness. So it's a straight line that looks like this. Make sense, guys? Because if we don't have the gradient, we don't know how steep or flat it is, right? We don't know how steep it is. But by doing this, we know exactly whereabouts we can have the steepness for the graph as. So that's very important. Now, question 2. Again, I want to sketch this one. It's y equals to 2x. But again, guys, there's no constants following. So if I make x equals to 0, y will be 0. And when I make y 0, x will also be 0. Again, this one has intercept of 0, 0. So it passes through the origin. Now, once I've plotted that, let's look at the gradient. What is the gradient of this line, guys? Y equals to 2x. Again, remember, when y is the subject, the coefficient of x is always our gradient. So the gradient would be 2. So if gradient is 2, I can say that 2 is 2 over 1. Yeah, 2 is the same as 2 over 1. I made it into a fraction form like that. Again, because I want to specify what the rise is and run is. Because I know that gradient is rise over run. So rise must now be our 2 and run must now be our 1. So if I start with run, it's a positive 1, so we go horizontally 1 point. Now the rise is 2, so we go vertically up by 2. So it will kind of join up around here. So you've got to make a straight line passing through the origin, 0, 0, and it should be a steepness of reaching up to this point here. So if I draw a line, it will look like this. A line that passes through the origin and it has a steepness that reaches just that point there. And that's, again, we found it through the gradient, isn't it? So you have to show this in your working in order to draw your graph. Okay? Let's do another one, question 3. This time I want to sketch y equals to negative x. Tell me, guys, what is the gradient? The gradient must be negative 1 because this is negative 1x. Now before we do that, we know that the intercepts again should be 0, 0 because again when you sub x equals to 0, y will be 0, and when you sub y equals to 0, x is also 0. So it passes through the origin again. Again, there's no constant following, so it must be 0, 0. Now, as I said, the gradient is negative 1. Now negative 1, you can see that negative 1 is negative 1 over 1. Now if you like, guys, you can do 1 over negative 1. Either way is fine, as long as the outcome is negative 1. Okay, and it will still give us the same answer in terms of the graphing. So, all I did was make negative 1 into a fraction form as negative 1 over 1. So therefore I can conclude that rise is negative 1 and run is 1. So if I start with 1, the run, I go horizontally 1 point. Now this time the rise is negative 1, which means we have to go vertically downwards by 1 point. So now it passes through this point and the origin, so if I join it up, it will look like this. It passes through the origin and that point up to there. Now, as I said, guys, if you use 1 over negative 1 and you plot that using the rise over run, you should get the exact same graph. It's probably over here somewhere. Yeah, so it will still be the same steepness and the same graph. So you can do it either way you like. Next one, question 4. This time I want to sketch y equals to negative 2x. Now negative 2x, again, there's no constant following, so it must pass through 0, 0. So I plot 0 to start off with, so I know where it passes through. Now, what is the gradient, guys? Can everyone just tell me what the gradient is? Simply the coefficient of x, which is negative 2. So negative 2 is our gradient, and I made it to negative 2 over 1, because I know that negative 2 over 1 is negative 2. But guys, you can have 2 over negative 1 as well. Either way is fine, as long as the outcome is negative 2. So I made negative 2 rise and 1 the run. So if I start with run again, I go horizontally, just 1 point, because run is 1. And rise is negative 2, because it's negative, I have to go downwards vertically. So it's up to there, so we go up from that point, we go down 2 points there. And so now we can join it up. It passes through the origin, and it should be reaching this point here. So if I join it up, that would be our graph. Okay guys, so it's getting the hang of this, isn't it? It's very, very continuous pattern, as long as you know how to experiment with the graphing, the gradient, in terms of drawing the graph. Now the next one, it says find the graph of y equals to 2. Now this one has no x, right? There's no x, and y is 2. There's no x, so we can't actually determine the gradient straight away, but you can see that because y is 2, no matter what x is, even if x is 2, even if x is 1, even if x is negative 2, no matter what x is, because there's no x here, y will just always be 2. So this will be a horizontal line on y equals to 2. Okay guys, and if you have a look at the graph, guys, a flat line has a gradient of 0. Yeah, so remember guys, if it's just y equals 2, it means it's 0x. So the gradient is 0, so you know that's going to be a flat line. Yes guys? But if y equals to 2, it's always a horizontal line. So if y equals to 1, it would be a horizontal line on 1, etc, etc. Now the next one, this time is x equals 2, and there's no y. So, if there's no y, guys, there should not be any gradient. So if x equals to 2, like we discussed in the previous question, this time because it's x the subject, no matter what y is, even if y is negative 2, even if y is negative 10, whatever y is, x will just always be 2. So it's a vertical line on x equals to 2. And you can see any point on this line, x will just be 2. And remember guys, a vertical line has an undefined gradient. We can't have any gradient for a straight line, so just remember that, keep that in mind.